I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. My name is Jake, and I've been married to Lisa for 5 years. On the outside, we seemed like the perfect couple, young, in love, and living in a cozy neighborhood in Los Angeles. I worked as a graphic designer, and Lisa was an up-and-coming actress. At first, it was all fun and games. We would go to red carpet events, mingle with celebrities, and attend glamorous parties. But as time went on, I started noticing some red flags. It began slowly. Lisa became more secretive about her phone. She would get texts at odd hours and quickly put her phone down whenever I entered the room. She claimed it was just work-related stuff. I believed her, of course. She was busy rehearsing for a big role and I wanted to support her. But I felt a gnawing sensation in my gut that something wasn't right. Then there were the late nights. Instead of coming home after rehearsal, she would hang out with her co-stars, often coming home tipsy and a little too cheerful. I brushed it off as her just having a good time with friends, but deep down, I was becoming increasingly uneasy. The laughter that used to fill our home began to fade, replaced by a silence that felt heavy and awkward. The breaking point came one night when I accidentally stumbled upon an email on her laptop. I was looking for a recipe she had saved and noticed an email thread titled Late Night Ideas. Curiosity got the best of me and I clicked on it. My heart sank as I read through the messages, flirtatious exchanges and plans for secret meetups. The sender's name was familiar. It was Tom, a famous film director known for his infamous reputation and a string of hit movies. My hands trembled as I put the laptop down, a wave of nausea washing over me. Confronting Lisa was the hardest thing I've ever done. I waited until she came home that night. She walked in, laughing and carefree, and the sight of her made my blood boil. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me, instantly sensing the tension in the air. "What's wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. I took a deep breath and laid it all out, the emails, the late nights, everything. Her reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of remorse or shame, she laughed. "Oh, come on, Jake, you're being ridiculous. It's just work. You know how drama gets exaggerated in this industry." Her dismissive tone felt like a slap in the face. I pressed her further, wanting the truth. "Lisa, this is not just work. You're cheating on me." Her laughter faded and she finally dropped the act. "What do you want me to say?" I was bored. "You're always working, and Tom, he's exciting." The words stung like 1,000 tiny needles, piercing my heart. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All the love I had for her felt shattered in an instant. It was one thing to suspect she was cheating, but to hear her admit it so flippantly was a whole other level of betrayal. I was devastated and furious all at once. I spent that night pacing back and forth, my mind racing. How could she do this to us? To our life? To everything we built together? The emotional impact was overwhelming. I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and disgust. I loved this woman, and she had thrown it all away for a fling with some famous director. It felt like my whole world had crumbled. As I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wouldn't let her get away with this. She had messed with the wrong guy. I wasn't just going to accept her betrayal, I was going to do something about it. That night, a plan started forming in my mind, a way to ensure they both faced the consequences of their actions. The idea of revenge began to take root, and with it, a dark sense of purpose. I would not be the victim here. I would turn the tables. In the days following the confrontation, the atmosphere in our home was electric with tension. Lisa tried to act as if nothing had happened, putting on her usual bubbly demeanor, but I could see through the facade. It was like living with a stranger. I was filled with a mix of hatred and heartbreak. I knew I had to keep my emotions in check if I was going to execute my plan. The more I thought about her betrayal, the more it fueled my anger. I began to research Tom, the director who had so callously invaded my marriage. I wanted to know everything about him, his career, his relationships, and especially his darker secrets. I was determined to find some dirt that could ruin him, not just for the sake of revenge, but to show Lisa the consequences of her choices. I spent hours combing through articles and interviews, diving into the world of gossip blogs and entertainment news. What I found was both shocking and infuriating. Tom had a reputation. A trail of accusations and rumors followed him like a shadow. Some were whispers of inappropriate behavior, while others hinted at a darker side that involved manipulation and exploitation of young actresses. It was almost too easy. As I gathered information, I noticed a pattern. Tom had a penchant for leveraging his power over vulnerable women in the industry. It made my blood boil thinking about how Lisa had fallen for his charm. I was filled with a sense of purpose now. The plan was taking shape, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. One evening, after Lisa had gone out for another work-related meeting with Tom, I sat down at my computer and began crafting a detailed exposé. I couldn't just dive in haphazardly. I needed a strategy. My goal was to hit both of them where it hurt, Tom's career and Lisa's image. I wrote about his past, documenting each accusation and pairing it with snippets of what Lisa had told me about their relationship. I was meticulous, ensuring that I had enough evidence to make a splash. But I didn't want to just release this information anonymously. I wanted to make sure it was seen by the right people. I reached out to a few entertainment journalists I found online, people who had written about Tom before. I crafted an email, articulating what I had found and made it clear that this was an opportunity for a big story. I knew that if the right outlet picked it up, it would spread like wildfire. While I waited for responses, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and dread. Was I really willing to destroy my wife's career as well? The thought crossed my mind, but I quickly brushed it aside. Lisa had made her choice. She had betrayed me, and now it was time for her to face the consequences. As I sat there, I thought about the possibility of losing her completely. Deep down, I had hoped that maybe she would realize the gravity of what she had done and come crawling back, begging for my forgiveness. But the longer I worked on my plan, the more I realized that I was ready to move on. I wanted to be free from the pain she had caused me. A few days later, I received an email from a well-known journalist who wanted to meet. I was ecstatic but also terrified. What if this backfired? Would I be the one who ended up getting hurt in the end? But there was no turning back. I made arrangements to meet him at a cafe in Hollywood, just a few blocks from where Lisa often spent her time. Meeting the journalist felt surreal. As I recounted my story and handed over the evidence I had compiled, I could see the wheels turning in his head. This was going to be huge, I could feel it. The adrenaline surged through me, and for the first time since discovering Lisa's affair, I felt a sense of control. As we wrapped up our conversation, the journalist looked at me and said this could be the beginning of the end for him. A smile crept across my face, but it quickly faded as I thought about Lisa. Would she see me as a monster for what I was about to unleash? I shook off the doubt. She had chosen her path, and now it was time for her to realize the ramifications of her actions. After the meeting, I returned home, feeling both exhilarated and anxious. I was on the precipice of a decision that could change everything. The next step was crucial. I needed to prepare myself for the fallout. I had no idea how Lisa would react when the story broke. Would it push her further away, or would it bring her to her knees? The uncertainty loomed over me, but one thing was clear. I was ready to watch her world come crashing down. As I sat on the couch, contemplating my next move, I realized that this was no longer just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and finding closure. The emotional turmoil I had experienced was leading me to a new path, one that I hoped would free me from the pain and betrayal that had consumed me. I had a plan, and there was no going back now. The stage was set, and I was ready for the drama to unfold. The days dragged on after my meeting with the journalist, each moment feeling like an eternity as I waited for the story to break. I was a cauldron of anticipation and anxiety. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd feel a rush of adrenaline and dread, wondering if Lisa had found out or if Tom was already scrambling to cover his tracks. I had to maintain my composure. I needed to act normal around Lisa, who, despite everything, still inhabited my home. She was still playing the role of the devoted wife, at least on the surface. I felt a bizarre sense of detachment when I saw her getting ready for her rehearsals, putting on her makeup, and choosing her outfits. I could almost see the illusion she was trying to maintain. There was a part of me that wanted to confront her every single day, to shout at her that she was living a lie. But I held back, knowing that I had bigger plans unfolding. Then, one evening while scrolling through social media, I saw the headline: Hollywood director accused of exploitation. A rising star speaks out. My heart raced as I clicked on the article. It was everything I had hoped for and more. The journalist had done an excellent job incorporating the evidence I provided, including the emails and some anonymous quotes from other actresses who had been too afraid to come forward before. It was a bombshell. I sat back, a mixture of satisfaction and guilt washing over me. Tom's reputation was in tatters, and that meant Lisa's connection to him was jeopardized. The article sparked outrage online and in the industry. It was all over social media within hours, trending on platforms as people expressed their outrage and support for the victims. The hashtag #MeToo was reignited, and people began digging into Tom's past, unearthing more stories, more accusations. It was like a wildfire spreading, and I was the one who had lit the match. But then, just as I was reveling in the chaos I had helped create, my phone rang. It was Lisa. My stomach dropped. "Jake, we need to talk. Can you meet me at our favorite cafe?" I felt a wave of panic wash over me. Did she know? Was she going to confront me about the article? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was about to unfold. I arrived at the cafe, my heart pounding in my chest. The atmosphere was thick with tension as I spotted her sitting at a corner table, her face pale and drawn. "Hey," she said, looking up as I approached. There was no warmth in her voice, just an underlying current of anxiety. "Hey," I replied, trying to maintain my cool. "What's going on?" "I saw the article," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You can't seriously think this is going to end well for either of us." "Is that why you called me here?" I asked, feeling a surge of defiance. "To talk about your affair with Tom?" Lisa's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. This isn't just about you and me anymore. This is about my career, Jake. Everything I've worked for is at risk." I felt a rush of satisfaction. "And what about my marriage?" "You put everything at risk when you decided to sleep with him." She opened her mouth to respond, but I could see the frustration building in her eyes. "Look, I messed up, I get it, but we need to think about this logically. If Tom goes down, he's going to take me with him. I can't afford to lose my shot at this career." Her desperation was palpable, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the laughter in her voice when she dismissed my feelings, and the sympathy quickly evaporated. "Maybe that's the price you pay for your choices, Lisa," I said, my voice steady. "You can't have it both ways." She leaned forward, her expression shifting from desperation to anger. "You think this was just some fun fling? I loved you, Jake. I thought we were a team, but you've gone and ruined everything." I held her gaze, refusing to back down. "You ruined it the moment you decided to cheat, Lisa. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of this." The silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of our animosity. I could see tears welling in her eyes, and for a moment I almost felt bad, but then I reminded myself that she had made her choices. The consequences were hers to bear. "I don't care about your career, Lisa," I said finally, my voice low and firm. "You made your bed and now you'll have to lie in it." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You're a monster, Jake. You're going to regret this." I watched her storm out of the cafe, feeling a mix of relief and regret. I had finally stood up for myself, but the aftermath of the confrontation was still swirling in my mind. As I sat there alone, I realized that this was just the beginning. The fallout from the article would continue to ripple through our lives. Tom's downfall would surely lead to an avalanche of consequences for Lisa, and I was left wondering how far she would go to salvage her career and our marriage. In the depths of my soul, I understood that I needed to prepare for the worst. The next phase of my plan was unfolding, and it was shaping up to be a chaotic ride. What would Lisa do next? Would she fight back? Would she come to me for help? I steeled myself for whatever awaited. I had drawn the line, and there was no going back. The fallout from the article hit hard and fast. Within days, Tom's career was effectively in ruins. The entertainment world, which once revered him as a genius, turned its back in record time. Awards ceremonies canceled his nominations, studios pulled projects, and actresses who had once fawned over him were now speaking out against his behavior. The wave of outrage washed over Hollywood, and I felt a grim satisfaction each time I read about it. But with every victory I savored, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach over what lay ahead for Lisa. In the following weeks, I kept a low profile. It wasn't hard to do since the media frenzy surrounding Tom had put a spotlight on everyone involved, especially Lisa. She was still trying to salvage her career, but the damage had been done. Casting directors who once saw her as a rising star now hesitated, wary of the controversy that followed her. It was hard to watch, knowing I had a hand in it, yet I felt a sense of justice for what she had put me through, but Lisa was far from defeated. I started getting reports from mutual friends, whispers about her trying to spin the narrative in her favor. She claimed that she had been a victim too, caught in the web of Tom's manipulation. I could picture her rehearsing her lines, putting on the innocent act for anyone who would listen. She was trying to paint herself as the wronged party, and it infuriated me. One evening, as I was scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a video of Lisa addressing the scandal publicly for the first time. My heart raced as I hit play, ready to hear her words. She stood in front of a camera, her expression somber, tears in her eyes, playing the victim perfectly. "This has been a difficult time for me," she said, voice trembling. "I was caught up in a situation I didn't understand, and I realize now how much pain my actions have caused." The facade was flawless. She spoke about being manipulated by Tom, about how she felt pressured to remain silent. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. I could almost hear the collective gasp of sympathy from her followers. "I'm working to be better," she continued, "and I hope to earn back the trust of my loved ones." As I watched, rage bubbled up inside me. How could she twist the narrative like this? She was painting herself as innocent when she had been the one to make the decision to cheat. That night I lay awake in bed, replaying her words over and over in my head. I was furious but also confused. Was I the villain in her story? Did she truly believe the lies she was telling? The following day, I drove to work, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. I knew I had to do something to counteract her narrative and show the truth once and for all. The idea hit me like a lightning bolt. I would gather evidence of her lies, emails, texts, anything that could expose her manipulations. Her public portrayal of victimhood needed to be dismantled. I spent the next few weeks on a mission. I knew Lisa was still in contact with Tom, and I began monitoring her phone for any communications. I figured I could use some old skills from my graphic design days to track her online activity without her knowing. It felt invasive, but I was willing to go to the ends of the earth to unearth the truth. Late one night, while digging through her old emails, I stumbled upon a thread that made my heart sink. It was an exchange between Lisa and Tom, filled with flirtatious messages and plans to meet up, even after the public scandal broke. I couldn't believe my eyes. Here she was, acting like she was scared and broken, while still keeping in contact with the very man who had hurt her. I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was the smoking gun I needed. I saved the screenshots, my heart pounding in anticipation. I had to act fast before she could spin her story any further. With this new evidence, I could expose her for what she truly was, a liar who was still entangled in the mess she had created. But as I prepared to release the information, a part of me hesitated. I wondered if I was becoming the villain in my own story. Was I sinking to her level by plotting this revenge? I had convinced myself that she deserved to face the consequences, yet part of me still longed for the love we had once shared. I wrestled with these feelings in the days that followed, torn between the desire for justice and the remnants of love. Then, the untimely news hit me hard. Tom had been found dead in his apartment, and the authorities were investigating. The headlines blasted across every news outlet. My breath caught in my throat as I processed the information. This was not how I envisioned my plan unfolding. The reality of it settled like a heavy weight on my chest. I never wanted this to escalate to such a level, and now I felt sick with guilt. Had my actions contributed to this? Sure, Tom was a manipulative scumbag, but I didn't want to be linked to his death. The thought of having played a part in someone's demise shook me to my core. In the midst of all this chaos, Lisa came home one night and I saw the raw panic in her eyes. She was pale, trembling, clearly shaken by the news. "Jake, have you heard?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, I heard," I replied, trying to remain calm but feeling a storm brewing inside me. "I can't believe it," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want this to happen. I just wanted to keep my job." Suddenly, the balance of power shifted. She was no longer the confident woman who had tried to manipulate her way out of trouble. She was scared, and it was both unsettling and oddly satisfying to see her like this. But as I looked at her, I felt the remnants of my anger begin to fade. This was no longer just about revenge. It had spiraled into something far more serious. I realized that I was more invested in my own emotional battle than in her downfall. The consequences were becoming too severe. I didn't just want to destroy her. I wanted to reclaim my life. As I grappled with these complex feelings, I knew I had a choice to make. Would I continue down this dark path of revenge, or would I finally find a way to move on from the pain she had caused me? The very last thread of my plan hung in the balance, and I needed to decide if it was worth it. In the aftermath of Tom's death, the chaos around us intensified. The media was in a frenzy, and the narrative shifted dramatically. Suddenly, Lisa was no longer just the woman caught in a scandal. She was now a potential witness in a high-profile investigation. The authorities were probing Tom's life, looking into his relationships, his past, and the circumstances surrounding his death. Lisa was swept up in this whirlwind, and I could see her struggling to maintain her composure. As she sat across from me one evening, the gravity of the situation hit home. "Jake, this is so much bigger than I thought," she said, her voice trembling. "I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to be successful. I didn't think about the fallout." I sat back, a whirlwind of emotions churning within me. Part of me wanted to take her hands in mine, to comfort her and tell her everything would be okay. But another part of me felt cold, calculating, the part that remembered the betrayal, the lies. "You brought this on yourself, Lisa," I said, my voice steady but laced with the bitterness I could no longer hide. "You wanted the thrill, and now it's come back to bite you." Her eyes flashed with anger, but the fear behind them was undeniable. "I didn't think it would end like this. I thought I could manage it, keep it under wraps. I never meant for this to happen." I could see the weight of her choices pressing down on her, and for the first time since this all started, I felt something shift within me. I was tired of the anger, tired of the games. Deep down, I knew that revenge was a double-edged sword. I didn't want to be the one to destroy her life completely, even if she had shattered mine, but I also couldn't let her manipulate me again. "You need to be honest with yourself, Lisa," I said, my voice firm. "You're not the victim here. You made choices that led us both to this point." As the night wore on, the tension in the room felt palpable. I knew I had to make a decision. The evidence I had collected, her messages, the proof of her continued interaction with Tom, could still be used against her. But did I really want to go down that road? The next day, I found myself at the office, trying to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to what was unfolding in Lisa's life. She had been called in for questioning by the police, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled in my stomach. What if they decided to drag me into this as well? I decided to take a break from the chaos and went for a walk to clear my head. As I strolled through a nearby park, I saw couples laughing, holding hands, and enjoying each other's company. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling in my life. I felt an overwhelming sense of loss, not just of the relationship I once cherished, but of the person I had become. I was so consumed by my desire for revenge that I had forgotten what it felt like to be happy. That night, after Lisa returned home from her questioning, I confronted her again. "How did it go?" I asked, trying to gauge her mental state. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "They just asked questions. They want to know everything about me and Tom." "I can't believe this is happening," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Lisa, you need to come clean about everything. If you don't, this could get a lot worse for you," I said, my tone serious. "Your career and your freedom could be on the line. This isn't just about us anymore." "I know that," she snapped. "But what if they find out how involved I was? I don't want to be dragged into this mess." I could hear the panic in her voice and it struck a chord. Despite everything, she was scared. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of the woman I fell in love with, a person who was vulnerable and frightened, not the confident actress who had betrayed me. You have to take responsibility for your actions, Lisa. You have to own your mistakes, I said gently, trying to find a way to bridge the gap between us. As the days passed, I continued to wrestle with my emotions. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the only way forward was to confront the truth head-on. I couldn't keep living in this toxic environment, and neither could Lisa. The resentment was eating away at me, and the bitterness was turning into something much darker. Finally, I made my decision. I would confront Lisa one last time and urge her to come clean, not just to the police but to herself. I wanted her to take ownership of her actions, to acknowledge the pain she had caused, not only to me but to everyone involved. I wasn't just doing this for her, I was doing it for myself. Lisa, we need to talk, I said one evening, my heart pounding in my chest as I prepared for the conversation. She looked up from the couch, her expression wary. What now, Jake? She asked defensively. I want you to tell the truth about everything, I said, my voice steady. You need to go to the police and tell them everything you know about Tom. You can't keep hiding behind the lies. She looked at me, eyes wide with surprise. You want me to turn on him after everything that's happened? It's not about that. It's about owning what you've done. You need to be honest about your involvement. This isn't just about your career anymore, it's about your integrity and your future, I urged. I could see the gears turning in her mind. For the first time, I sensed a crack in her armor, a flicker of understanding. And what about you? What if they come after you too? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't care about the consequences anymore. I don't want to be involved in this lie, I replied, feeling a sense of liberation wash over me. I need to move on, and I can't do that while we're stuck in this web of deceit. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. But what if it all comes crashing down? What if everything I've worked for disappears? Then it disappears and you start fresh. You rebuild from the ground up. It's better than living with this weight on your shoulders, I said, feeling resolute. After a long silence, she finally nodded, her expression shifting from fear to determination. You're right. I can't keep living like this. It's time to face the music. In that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the turning point we both needed. We had been entangled in a web of lies, but perhaps it was time to cut ourselves free. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be consequences, but for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page. As we prepared for what lay ahead, I realized that I was finally ready to let go of the anger and resentment. I could take back control of my life, and maybe, just maybe, Lisa could find a way to reclaim hers too. It was a fragile hope, but it was a start. The days that followed our conversation were filled with tension and uncertainty. Lisa and I navigated the aftermath of her decision to come clean with a sense of cautious optimism. She agreed to meet with the police and confess everything she knew about Tom, including the truth of their relationship and her role in the scandal. The day of her meeting was nerve-wracking. I sat in the waiting room of the police station, my heart racing as I thought about what lay ahead. What if they decided to charge her? What if her career was irreparably damaged? The questions weighed heavily on my mind, a mixture of fear and hope leading to a tumultuous storm inside me. When Lisa finally emerged from the interrogation room, her face was pale but resolute. She looked like she had shed a heavy weight. I did it, she said, her voice shaking slightly. I told them everything. Relief flooded through me, but I could sense the anxiety still hanging over her. How did it go? I asked, wanting to know if she felt she had done the right thing. They were surprisingly understanding, she said, taking a deep breath. They wanted to know about Tom, about his behavior. I told them everything I knew about the emails, the late-night meetings, and how I felt pressured. As she spoke, I could see a flicker of the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who wasn't just a facade but someone with the courage to face her mistakes. I think I did the right thing, Jake, she added, looking me in the eyes. I couldn't keep living in fear of being exposed. It felt empowering to finally tell the truth. It was a strange moment of clarity. In the midst of chaos, we had both begun to find our way back to ourselves. I realized then that while we had both made huge mistakes, there was a chance for redemption, not just for Lisa but for me as well. As weeks turned into months, Lisa faced the fallout from her revelations. There were some in the industry who still turned their backs, but others began to support her, recognizing her bravery in coming forward. She had transformed the narrative from one of betrayal to one of resilience, and I admired her for it. I too started to reclaim my life. The anger that had fueled my desire for revenge slowly faded, replaced by a sense of peace. I focused on my work, pouring my energy into my designs and exploring new opportunities. The experience had forced me to reevaluate my priorities and to consider what truly mattered. Eventually, Lisa and I found ourselves at a crossroads. The tension that once filled our home began to dissipate, replaced by an understanding that we needed to decide what our relationship would look like moving forward. We had both been through so much, and it was clear that our love needed to be rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. 1. Evening, as we sat together at the kitchen table, I took a deep breath. "Where do we go from here?" I asked, my heart racing as I awaited her answer. Lisa looked thoughtful, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "I think we need to be honest about where we are. I care about you, Jake, I really do, but I've hurt you in ways I can't take back." "I know," I replied, feeling a mixture of sadness and acceptance. "But I also think we both deserve a chance to heal. Maybe we can take some time apart to figure out what we want." Her eyes widened slightly, and I could see the pain of our situation reflected in her gaze. "You're right. I need to find out who I am without all the noise, and you deserve someone who can give you their whole heart." As we spoke, I felt the tension begin to lift as we acknowledged the reality of our situation. It was a bittersweet moment, but it was also one filled with hope. We had both been through the fire, and while our paths might diverge for a time, there was a part of me that believed we could come back together, stronger than before. In the following weeks, we began the process of moving on. Lisa started attending workshops for actresses focusing on empowerment and personal growth. I immersed myself in my work, taking on new projects and embracing the freedom that came with reclaiming my life. As the dust settled, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also catalyzed profound changes in both of us. I learned about the importance of honesty, integrity, and self-love. I learned that while revenge might have been tempting, it was the journey of healing and redefining oneself that truly mattered. In the end, Lisa and I remained in touch, supporting each other from a distance. I didn't know where our paths would lead, but I felt a sense of closure. We had both made mistakes, but we had also grown. As I looked ahead to the future, I realized that life was about more than just the betrayals we face. It's about the strength we find in ourselves to move forward. I had emerged from the turmoil a different person, wiser, more resilient, and ready for whatever came next. And at the heart of it all, I knew I had the power to shape my own story, free from the shadows of the past.